When a golfer signs up for Arcos's system, it asks them how far they think they drive the golf ball. Then they measure how far they actually hit it. On average, the claim when they signed up was 24 yards longer than the truth. And that's the smallest lie that golfers tell themselves in this entire video. By the end of this, you'll see the three places that your self image and your scorecard disagree, while your brain keeps picking the self image every single time, and the exact test that settles once and for all if you really are the exception to the rule. And I want to be upfront. I took this test before I turned the camera on and pointed it right back at you. And we'll get to how that went. My name's Isaac, and just this year, I've helped people break 90 for the first time, break 80 for the first time, and cut their handicaps in half with the free material that we put out on here and with the Play Golf app. Everything in this video comes from real benchmarks from millions of shots. If you don't know your own numbers, it's hard to take this test. So we've got the free stats guide down below that walks you through 3 feet to 300 yards for pro golfers all the way through 20 handicaps. Feel free to scan this QR code or click down below so you can have that as a reference as we walk through this video. When a golfer signs up for Arcos, like we talked about earlier, the app asks them how far they drive it. Then, as the player is going through their rounds and Arcos is tracking their actual stats, they find out how far each club actually goes, including that driver. So Lou Stagner and Arcos Golf looked at the first 20 recorded rounds in each player's library and found that there was a discrepancy of 24 yards between how far that golfer thought they hit it and how far they actually did. And what gets even funnier is the golfers who said that they hit it 275 yards or more were off by 36.4 yards. It's a true my fish was this big situation. The more distance between your hands that you claim that that fish was, it's probably even more off from what reality was. Based on all that information I just gave you, take a second and take a guess how far the average male golfer in Arcos's database hit their drive. Let's go Price is Right rules. 224 yards. And you would think that that number's gone up and up and up over the past few years as distance and speed training's gotten more popular. Nope, it's just gone up by 1 yard. The important part of this is not saying that all golfers are liars. Your brain just remembers your best shots. Whereas if you're tracking everything, that database remembers all of them. And before you feel like you're out on an island with this, I absolutely did the same thing until I got into college and realized how important it was to understand how far I actually hit the golf ball. I even went through a season in college where I was airmailing greens on purpose just to figure out if I was hitting the ball that far or not. How far we hit the ball is one of just 3 things that we can very easily trick ourselves into thinking that we are different than we actually are. And the second is scoring. And in all honesty, I blame the handicap system. Most golfers treat their handicap index as if it's their average. For example, a 15 handicap might think that they should always shoot around 87, or really, they're probably thinking they should never shoot worse than 87. Unfortunately, your handicap is not your average, it is your potential. An actual 15 handicap only breaks 90 1 out of every 3 rounds. I wasn't a math major in college, but that's definitely less than 50% of the time. And that's how the handicap system is built. It takes your best 8 out of your last 20 rounds. So for example, I'm a +4 something right now. I do not average 68 or whatever that is. If you finish every round comparing yourself to your handicap, you're setting yourself up for failure because over 50% of the time, you're not going to hit that mark. And that's where the spiral starts that we've talked about 1,000 times before, where you think it's your swing or you think it's something else and you scroll Instagram reels and you're trying 1,000 different things and you can't stay focused on one thing at a time. And if you want a plan that's actually built, focused for your skills, your facilities, and the actual amount of time that you have during the week, you can grab the Play Golf app down below, use code Isaac, ISAAK, and you'll get $20 off every single year, every year for life. You also get 7 free days. So just download it, try it out, screenshot stuff, and quit if you want. I don't care. The dark horse of lies that golfers tell themselves is all around strategy. I don't know how many comments my Instagram reel on this has at this point, but it's got to be in the hundreds. Let's walk through a very realistic scenario. You've got 260 yards to a green, and you're trying to lay up to 80 to 100 yards because you're going to have a nice full wedge in from there. And everybody knows that full swing is much more comfortable and therefore the better option to have than pushing the ball further up to that awkward half wedge shot. Here's the problem. Mark Brody did an analysis on this specifically utilizing 40 100,000 shots from 130 golfers. Almost everyone scores better from 30 yards than they do from 80. And this continues to work its way. At every single handicap level, you will hit more greens and score better the closer that you are to the green. So get as close as feasibly possible. Don't bring in a bunch of trouble, but get it up there as close to the green as you possibly can. Now, I know what you're thinking, but I'm the outlier. We've walked through why you're not the outlier. And if you really think you're the outlier, I beg of you, keep your stats for the next year, come back here, tell me you're the outlier, and that's great. There's gonna be a handful of outliers, but odds are you're probably not that. Now, you also might be thinking, well, these are committed golfers. They're tracking their stats from Arcos and ShotScope and even the Mark Brody data. So these committed golfers don't necessarily apply to everybody, but the average golfer who's never tracked anything in their life is not going to inflate things less than the golfer who's tracking everything. They're going to inflate their ego and their numbers even more. Okay, so here's the real question. This data has been public for years at this point. It's completely free. It's everywhere. Why does every single golfer still trust their gut over these databases? Two reasons, and they're just human problems in general. They're not golf specific. Reason number one is the memory problem. Your brain isn't necessarily a hard drive. Think of it as like a highlight reel editor. So it's not going to keep the average 80%. It's going to keep the outliers on the 10%. That's why every single golfer has those few holes that are super uncomfortable, because you've got a bad memory bank of highlights of bad things that happened on that hole. But it also works the other way, where you're going to think of highlights in your top 10%. This is why you might think you hit it farther than you do, or why you might be better from laying up to a certain number. So when you go to your memory bank to think about how far you hit your 7-iron, it doesn't think of the average strikes that brought your actual number to 150, let's say. It thinks of the perfect ones that you hit 165. And we do this in life in general, by the way. This is, once again, this is not a golf specific problem. Reason number two, and this is the really big one. If you listen to nothing else in this video, listen to this. The trick that your brain runs on you is that you're not lumped into the average. While this data might apply in general, you're not general. Your game is unique. I want to be very clear here. You as a person are incredibly special. You as a golfer in a database are not. That is not a bad thing. It's actually a great thing. At a bare minimum, you can utilize the stats that are free down below to improve your game because you fit in that database. We've talked about in previous videos how comparing yourself to a tour pro is incredibly dangerous, but comparing yourself to the floor can be dangerous as well, which brings us to the test. Because here's the thing, I don't want you to just blanketly surrender to the averages forever. If you want to play your best golf, you have to understand your own game in and out. These averages are just a starting point, because some golfers really are the exception. And this test exists to find out if you are one of those. And it has 4 simple rules. Rule number 1, weirdly enough, is to default to the database. Until proven otherwise, you're the average. So you make the average's best decisions. Get it as close to the hole as possible, maybe take a little bit more club into greens, pick conservative targets and make aggressive swings at those conservative targets. And this isn't just pessimism, it's refusing to bet strokes on your outliers. Now, rule number 2 overrides rule number 1 in 2 places, because databases don't necessarily see your lie and they don't see penalty areas. Now, when I say penalty areas, I mean you're taking a literal penalty shot, not necessarily a bunker, but something that's staked red or white. A terrible lie or a massive pond can absolutely flip your decision. But what's not allowed is for one bad lie to affect the rest of your round and how you make those decisions. Rule number 3 is what allows you to override the database. You can override it on one condition: that you've tracked that exact scenario 20 or more times with an included outcome. That's the whole test. If you think you're better from 80 yards than you are from 40, track it. If your logged shots say that you really are better from 40 yards than you are from 80, then great. There's your exception to the rule. It also probably means that you need to work on your 40-yard shots. So when I say you're not special, you can be special, but you can't be special based on your own memory or on vibes. And you're never going to find out if you don't track things. For example, I never realized until I started tracking my stats that I was awful from 100 to 125 yards. I was actually better from 125 to 150 than I was from 100 to 125. Now, did I start laying back to that number? No, I just tried to get better from 100 to 125. So there's a couple different approaches that you can take to this. But ultimately, you're never going to understand your own game if you don't track things. Just like you won't understand your own diet if you don't keep track of what you're eating, or you won't ever get stronger in the gym if you don't track what weights you're using. This is just a game at the end of the day. So if you're not into all the tracking stuff, that's completely fine. I'd be weird if you're still watching at this point and you weren't into that stuff. But if you are and you want to get better at golf, you have to track, and you have to track honestly. Track the bad rounds honestly, because that's where you learn the most. And one thing that you'll learn is rule number 4, which is that boring golf is going to be your best golf. And if there's a scary yardage or a scary tee shot, turn that into a boring shot. Go and work on that specific scenario so it becomes boring. It becomes routine. This data is not built to insult you. It's there to help describe you the way it describes everyone until it's proven otherwise. Most golfers never take the test, and deep down, I think it's because they don't want to know the truth about their game. But the problem is you can never get better at something if you don't have a real baseline. If you pass the test that we just walked through with those 4 rules, great. Now you know what's going on with your game. If you don't pass the test, great. Now you know what's going on with your game. I used to get mad at comments that disagreed with data like this when I post on Instagram and a ton of people come and attack me and say that I'm wrong or whatever. I used to get mad because not I was personally offended, but because they're yelling at something that's objective. Now when I see those comments, I don't even respond. I just get kind of sad because that to me describes how they live their life. They live their life by lying to themselves and wanting to prove that they're the exception to a rule when the rules exist to help you. Those rules also exist to help you ladder up. So if you want to go from a 20 to a 10 handicap, those databases can help you get there. It can also help you understand how long it's going to take to get there. And if you want to know if it's possible to become a scratch golfer within the next year or two, the video that I just published is all about that. If you don't go watch that, get off this app, go practice, download the Play Ready Golf app, and get after it.